$100 inside of 3 years inside of Harlem. But overall, 70% of single mothers are going to be impacted by this. They're going to be paying less tax. And then I think moving on from the tax issues, well, I would just say look at what we're doing internationally. We've got a 55 majority Muslim coalition that was built around Saudi Arabia, and we've pushed ISIS back. So I think we're doing pretty well for his first year in.
Michael?
I would say I don't agree with the outcome on the tax reform bill, but I understand it was an accomplishment that the Senate Republican majority and the White House and the House majority, were very proud of. But this all came together in the last moments of what has been a very contentious year. So if we want to look at the whole year from the inauguration through next week and the calendar year, we'll see that really folks got their legs under them just very recently. And that's appropriate for any new administration and for any new legislative leadership. But this was much rockier. This was much more difficult. So I think looking ahead, I think the president finally understands that the Senate and Congress doesn't work for him and the courts don't work for him. And I think Congress understands now how they should be working with this president. So yes to everything you said about veterans. God bless them and thank them for their service. But in this regard, I think it's been a very thin year with a lot of controversy and legislative efforts. For example, the infrastructure bill, big jobs bill is something that should have been tackled first, not trying to again repeal the ACA and not the travel ban that has been struck down by the courts. So not an accomplishment I would stand behind, but I understand it's an accomplishment nonetheless, but it came in the last minutes of the year.
Well, I think it is, it's a last-minute move, but I think it was a powerful move, and I think we're going to see the impacts of that next year. Europe is already clamoring because they're saying that a 21% corporate tax, there's a lot of incentive for companies to actually expatriate. I think that's a huge boon for America. Longer term, I think we're going to see the impacts of the tax bill coming through once paperwork and everything else catches up with it. But I will say that, he's got his sea legs in place. Infrastructure is coming. I think before they put that on the table, there had to be a lot of discussion. There's been rumblings about, tests with hyperloops and brand new technology. We've had move towards, the digitalization of government, and we're basically replacing old tech systems that have been in place since the 90s.
You sound good, but I'm not sure I agree with most of what you're saying.
It's already there.
So let me ask you about this idea of the two parties cooperating. Every president complains that he's not getting cooperation from the other party. We certainly heard it from President Obama that the Republicans won't work with me. But, there are analysts who say that under Trump it's worse than ever, that the Democrats are doing this resist movement and absolutely refusing to work with him, even on something that they might agree with. Let me ask you, Michael.
I would say if the administration started with an infrastructure and jobs bill, perhaps there would have been more cooperation and more bipartisan spirit around something like that. I can't speak for my former boss, but I can say that starting with something like that instead of the controversies that existed would set a different tone. And the opposition is supposed to oppose these things. And Democrats are looking to build a record going into the midterm elections that they can run on. And it's not too soon to even talk about 2020. But when we say Democrats, it's not one monolithic thing. We have Senate leadership, we have House leadership, and then we have the activists. And in some cases, I don't love this, the tail is wagging the dog. A lot of the energy and a lot of the heat is around the activist space that, much like the far right, we saw with the Senate candidate in Alabama, is going to be driving for candidates on the Democratic side that might not be that electable to the wider population, to the wider voting public. So we'll have to see how that works out.
We're seeing that on the Republican side as well. A lot of division now in the Republican Party.
Well, I'd echo the comment. I don't think Republicans are a monolith. And I think, in between the fact we're seeing as part of, sort of the Me Too response, you're seeing a lot of seats being abated. I think we're going to see more seat vacancies coming in January. I think we're also looking at, for one of the first times since the 1800s, a period where we're going to have about 40 or 50 seats in heavy battles across the country. So the question is not just necessarily one of, what is going to be the commitment of the Republican Party, but two, I think it's to these issues that Americans are going to be looking for inside of 18 through to the early 20s. Transportation is huge. The cost of transportation in this country is almost unbearable in many areas. And I think secondarily behind that, coming up with something that we can work together on related to jobs. I think that's going to be something that leads to long-term success, and I think the opportunity for President Trump to set the stage for 2020.
You never have a second opportunity to make a first impression, so it would have been better to start this at the outset. Look, to be fair, also, I'm not the president's biggest defender, but this was, until the last 10 days, 2 weeks in November 2016, an unexpected win in some regards. So folks needed to get their legs under them and acclimate to a new situation. Right. So I'll give a pass for a month or two, but it could have been better.
Oz, what about court appointments, the Supreme Court and a lot of other judge vacancies?
Look, I think Supreme Court Justice Gorsuch, it was a great selection. I think he's going to uphold the Constitution to the best of his ability. We've got 73 additional nominations that are put forward. I think if we can work through, the balance in between developing relationships with the Democrats and, as my colleague has said, really kind of figuring out how President Trump and the Republicans can move forward, because he's not a politician per se. People keep forgetting this. He is not a Hillary Clinton. He is a new brand of politician coming forward with new policies that he would like to get through in more of a business manner, and then figuring out how that is necessarily going to work with Congress is something I think he's done this year.
We're almost out of time. Let's just give Michael a quick last word.
Look, I would say on judges, this is what happens when you have a Senate majority and you have a White House that is nominating judicial options and possibilities that I personally don't approve of, but elections have consequences, and I'm not happy about it, but this is what's going on. One would hope that they at least have more experience than the recent slate of candidates, one of whom was really revealed to be...
the viral video, yes, we all saw it. All right, Michael and Oz Sultan, thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Meanwhile, overseas, strong words from North Korea following a new round of UN sanctions over its latest missile test. Pyongyang's response to the punishment. What does it mean for the potential for war? That's next on this Christmas holiday.
Stay confident for over 75 years. Call us or your advisor. T. Rowe Price. Invest with confidence.
Needles, essential for vinyl, but maybe not for people with rheumatoid arthritis, because there are options, like an injection. Xeljanz XR, a once-daily pill for adults with moderate to severe RA for whom methotrexate did not work well. Xeljanz XR can reduce pain, swelling, and further joint damage, even without methotrexate. Xeljanz XR can lower your ability to fight infections, including tuberculosis. Serious, sometimes fatal infections, lymphoma, and other cancers have happened. Don't start Xeljanz XR if you have an infection. Tears in the stomach or intestines, low blood cell counts, and higher liver tests and cholesterol levels have happened. Your doctor should perform blood tests before you start and while taking Xeljanz XR and monitor certain liver tests. Tell your doctor if you are in a region where fungal infections are common, and if you have had TB, hepatitis B or C, or are prone to infections. Needles, a must for vinyl, but for you, one pill a day may provide symptom relief. Ask your doctor about Xeljanz XR, an injection.
Hey, Janet. Hey, Kim. Can you suggest any good house painters? I'll take one from your top 4 guys and free background checks and reviews for each of them.
You can't expect your neighbors to do everything HomeAdvisor can. So to find and book a top-rated home pro for free, just ask HomeAdvisor.
If you drive a personal car for work and don't track your business miles, you could be losing thousands of dollars unless you have MileIQ by Microsoft. It's the app that automatically detects all of your business miles so you get a great deduction or reimbursement. MileIQ provides comprehensive reporting that shows you how much you save with each drive. The average MileIQ subscriber deducts $547 a month. That's $6,900 a year. So take control, download it for free, and join the millions of drivers who trust MileIQ by Microsoft.
North Korea
responding after the UN approved tough new sanctions against a rogue regime. The North Koreans calling those penalties, quote, an act of war. The UN took action after North Korea test-fired a missile late last month, which it claims could strike the entire U.S. mainland. Serious stuff. David Miller live in New York City with the news. David, what are we hearing from Pyongyang?
Well, today we're hearing that North Korea says the very idea that they will give up their nuclear weapons is, quote, a pipe dream. A statement from the country's central news agency said if the U.S. wishes to live safely, it's going to have to abandon what was referred to as its hostile policy. The UN resolution passed unanimously with the support of China as well as Russia, but North Korea is blaming the United States for the sanctions. A North Korean news reader, effectively a government spokesperson, lashed out at Washington.
We define this sanctions resolution rigged up by the U.S. and its followers as a grave infringement upon the sovereignty of our republic, and as an act of war, violating peace and stability in the Korean Peninsula and the region, and categorically reject the resolution.
The North Koreans say that they consider the sanctions no different from a complete economic blockade. And in an unrelated development at the UN, the new budget for the World Organization is calling for cutbacks. U.S. UN Ambassador Nikki Haley says the U.S. has negotiated a $285 million reduction from the UN's $5.4 billion budget. In a statement, the U.S. UN mission said the UN's bloated management has now been reduced.
Something the president's been wanting to do, David. Another country's agreed to move its embassy to Jerusalem after President Trump declared first that the U.S. would do that. What do we know?
Well, we're now hearing that Guatemala has agreed to move its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. It was one of 9 countries, you might recall, that voted with the United States against a General Assembly resolution criticizing President Trump's Jerusalem declaration. Israel's President Reuven Rivlin sent out a tweet saying, and I quote, Guatemala have shown that they know very well that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. I welcome their decision to bring their embassy to Jerusalem and thank them for their deep friendship. We look forward to welcoming you to Jerusalem. No word yet when that move is going to take place. A Palestinian lawmaker has blasted the decision, calling it a violation of international law. And according to a published report in Israel, the Israeli Foreign Ministry is saying that it is talking with as many as 10 other countries considering recognition now of Jerusalem as Israel's capital.
David Lee Miller, thank you. For more on this, let's bring in Jonathan Schanzer. He's the Senior Vice President of Research at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Welcome, and we appreciate you coming in today, Jonathan. And I wonder, you hear this every few weeks, every couple of months, the UN issues more sanctions. Is it enough to actually stop North Korea?
Well, it's not enough. It's a step in the right direction. The international community is obviously recognizing how serious things have deteriorated. But I would say that our sanctions program, the U.S. sanctions program on North Korea, is really a fraction of what we saw at the height of the pressure on the Iranian regime in, let's say, 2011, 2012, 2013. We've got a lot more tools left in that toolbox that I think we can pull out to put the squeeze on the North Koreans. I think the real question is whether we can get the international community on board. We're still seeing the Russians and particularly the Chinese go kicking and screaming every time we propose additional measures of pressure.
Well, let's dig deeper there, particularly with China, Jonathan, because you put your finger on the real issue, is whether China is really going to help here. And President Trump, in his first year in office, has claimed that as an accomplishment, that he's opened up a strong relationship with the Chinese president, President Xi. Do you agree with the president? Is the door being opened here to a strong partnership that is going to help us in North Korea?
Look, I think the door has been open in the sense that there is a dialogue that's now underway, and it was the right thing to do. The president understood that that was the pressure point. Something like 80 or 85% of all trade to North Korea goes through China, and so China is the linchpin, at least financially, if not more so, even militarily, in terms of keeping that regime alive. So now the question is, will the Chinese put the kind of pressure on the North Koreans that is necessary? My concern here is that the Chinese understand that if they put too much pressure on the North Koreans and the regime collapses, then it becomes basically a country that's aligned with the United States or no longer aligned with the Chinese. This is their ultimate fear as they start to think about that kind of long-term competition that they have going on with the United States.
So you mentioned a moment ago there's more in the toolbox, and that with Iran we were crippling their economy. What more can we do then? Give us a couple of examples of what's left in the toolbox to try and cripple North Korea.
Sure. I mean, look, first of all, I think we need to identify some of those banks that are operating inside China, some of those front companies that are operating there, and actually sanction them. And that's a dangerous thing as far as we're concerned when it comes to the Chinese. There's a lot of codependency financially there. I think that we can also start to take a look at each of the individual sectors within that North Korean economy and identify the pivotal companies, the pivotal areas that if we cut them off internationally, that it would hurt them even more. But more broadly, I think we just need to cut them off of their entire oil sector. We need to make sure that they can't use foreign labor anywhere around the world. We need to basically make them pariahs on the world stage. They're most of the way there, but I think, again, we've got a bit more room to run.
Jonathan, as we dissect exactly what went down in 2017, some of the biggest challenges for President Trump, when you look around the world, the fact that North Korea, as we mentioned a moment ago, has this ability with a missile to be able to reach the entire continental United States, I mean, it doesn't seem to me that there's a bigger foreign policy. There are a lot of threats around the world, but it doesn't seem to me that there's a bigger foreign policy, a threat for this nation, not just a challenge for President Trump, than that.
No, I think that's right. And when I talk to folks inside the administration, that's one of the first things that they'll say. They'll note that North Korea is kind of job one. After that, I think, is Iran, and rightfully so. After that, I think perhaps is some of the challenges that we have with Russia and China. But North Korea, I think, tops the agenda across the board.
No doubt about it. Big challenges in 2018. Jonathan Schanzer from the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Well, ahead, as we prepare to ring in the new year, we take a look back at some of the biggest news stories of 2017, from massive storms to the worst mass shooting in U.S. history. That's all coming up.
Captain of the Army wants to be certain that Chief Yellow Hawk is home to Montana.
17 almost behind us. It's been a wild year, packed with news from President Trump's inauguration to the Me Too movement. Our chief news anchor, Shepard Smith, has looked back at some of the year's biggest stories.
In 2017, a new president took office while powerful men fell as women came forward to say Me Too. Those stories and more dominating the headlines in 2017. The year started with a big change in Washington, the inauguration of President Donald Trump.
The people became the rulers of this nation again.
The next day, millions protested the new president at the women's marches across the country, the biggest single day of demonstrations in American history. One of the president's first major actions, announcing a travel ban against 7 Muslim-majority countries. After court battles and rewrites, the Supreme Court let a revamped version take effect in December, while the legal fight continues. The president also confronting North Korea after the test firing of its first intercontinental ballistic missile. The North also testing its most powerful nuclear weapon yet, a hydrogen bomb, and launching a missile that scientists say can hit any point in the United States. In April, President Trump got his first big win on Capitol Hill. The Senate confirmed Justice Neil Gorsuch to replace the late Antonin Scalia on the Supreme Court. In May, President Trump fired the FBI Director James Comey. That led to the appointment of a special counsel, Robert Mueller, to run the investigation into Russia's election meddling and possible collusion with members of Team Trump. The investigation led to the indictment of the former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort and the former campaign aide Rick Gates. Also, the former National Security Advisor General Michael Flynn pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI about his contacts with the Russian ambassador. He's now cooperating with the special counsel. Also in May, a deadly terror attack on an Ariana Grande concert in England. 22 people killed, dozens more hurt. Just one of several attacks against Western countries throughout the year. In June, a shooting at a Republican congressional baseball practice outside D.C. The majority whip, Steve Scalise, the most seriously wounded. 3 months later, he got a standing ovation as he returned to Congress.
You have no idea how great this feels to be back here at work in the People's House.
In July, Iraq's prime minister announced the liberation of Mosul, Iraq's second biggest city, after more than 3 years under ISIS rule. 3 months later, U.S.-backed forces in Syria said they had recaptured Raqqa, the Islamic State's self-proclaimed capital. Charlottesville, Virginia became the scene of deadly demonstrations. A man plowed his car into a crowd of people demonstrating against a white nationalist rally and killed a woman. Days later, across the nation, people turned out to see the first coast-to-coast total eclipse of the sun in nearly a century.
Everyone just joined together and we experienced everything together, and that's nothing can beat that.
Americans continue to recover from 3 devastating hurricanes, which hit during the end of the summer. First, Harvey slammed into the U.S. as a Category 4 storm, causing catastrophic damage to Houston and the Texas coast.
We are just beginning the process of responding to this storm.
Next, Irma, one of the strongest Atlantic hurricanes on record. It slammed Florida and the Caribbean with devastating rain. And finally, Hurricane Maria, carving a path of destruction through Puerto Rico, killing dozens of people and wiping out power to the entire island.
Come on out.
On October the 1st, O.J. Simpson walked free after spending 9 years behind bars following a botched robbery in Las Vegas. And just hours later in Las Vegas, the deadliest mass shooting in American history. 58 people killed and more than 500 wounded when a gunman fired into a crowded country music festival on the Las Vegas Strip. Still no word on his motive. Just a month later, another deadly mass shooting. 25 people died, including a pregnant woman, during a Sunday church service in Sutherland Springs, Texas. It's the deadliest shooting at a place of worship in American history.
No attack, no act of violence will ever break our spirit or diminish the faith of the American people.
In October, the legendary Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein lost his job and so much more after dozens of women accused him of harassment, assault, and even rape. But the accusations helped create the Me Too movement. Women and men came forward with stories about sexual misconduct. High-profile actors, musicians, journalists, and politicians all caught up in the scandal. Democratic lawmakers John Conyers and Al Franken announced their resignations. Then there's Roy Moore and the Alabama Senate race. Women accused him of harassing and assaulting them years ago when they were teenagers. Moore lost the special election to the Democratic opponent, Doug Jones. Finally, the House and Senate passed separate tax bills, calling for the largest overhaul of the American tax code in more than 3 decades. Looking ahead to 2018, the midterm elections coming up, the whole country waiting to see if voters will reject or reward President Trump. We're also keeping a close eye on tensions with North Korea and the latest sexual misconduct accusations. Of course, we'll be here for all of it. In New York, I'm Shepard Smith, Fox News.
You think about how grim it was in our Washington newsroom when Steve Scalise was shot.
Oh, yeah.
People didn't think he might make it, and 3 months later, as Shep pointed out, back and going strong.
Incredible. Well, some good news there anyway. Well, Republicans still divided after losing the Alabama Senate seat. Senator Mitch McConnell says they need to back candidates who can win. But strategist Steve Bannon vows to keep on fighting the establishment. Up next, our senior producer on Capitol Hill breaks down what seats are up for grabs next year. And from record-setting wildfires to historic flooding, including Houston, the country's 4th largest city, underwater after Hurricane Harvey. A look back at a year of extremely wild weather ahead.
I am totally blind. And Non-24 can make me show up too early.
Fox News Channel is bringing you an all-American New Year's celebration from New York City and around the country. Catch the biggest live performances and join the conversation using hashtag Fox News 2018. Kick back and watch the ball drop with your hosts Kennedy and Jesse Waters live from the heart of Times Square. Our must-see coverage begins New Year's Eve at 8 p.m. Eastern, right here on Fox News Channel.
Republicans Republicans won control of both sides of the Capitol building in 2016, but they've since lost one Senate seat in the deep red state of Alabama. Doug Jones's surprising victory has Democrats feeling better about capitalizing on President Trump's low approval ratings in next year's midterms. Republicans, meanwhile, are hoping their year-end tax victory will give them some momentum. So let's bring in Chad Pergram, Fox News senior producer on Capitol Hill. He is tracking the seats where Republicans are most vulnerable. Merry Christmas, Chad.
Merry Christmas. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
So one of the things you want to look at right now is something called the generic ballot. It favors Democrats by 13 points. That's staggering. We've had these big, landslide elections in 2008 where Democrats added to their majority in the House of Representatives. Certainly when Republicans won control of the House in a huge landslide in 2010, we were around 7 to 8 points. So 13 points portends a lot. How can Republicans screw this up? Well, the field, especially in the Senate, should favor Republicans. But Mitch McConnell, the majority leader, is very concerned about the types of candidates that the Republicans might be nominating. Roy Moore in Alabama is a case study in that. And listen to what Mitch McConnell had to say about the types of candidates who could be on the ballot this year for Republicans.
I want to nominate people who can actually win, because often people are tired of hearing me say this because I've said it fairly often. The people who win elections make policy and the others go into something else. Go home, go into another line of work. So yeah, we're going to be supporting people who can actually win.
Happened to Republicans in 2010 and 2012. There are 4 names which kind of stick in the craw of Mitch McConnell. Christine O'Donnell of Delaware. You also had Sharon Angle of Nevada. You had Richard Murdoch of Indiana, and the former Republican congressman from Todd Aiken from Missouri. All 4 were nominated. All these were states and seats that Republicans thought they could win, and they didn't. And there's a reason why Mitch McConnell did not become the majority leader until early 2015. Those were years that favored Republicans in the Senate, and they didn't get the Senate. It took a while. So this is why Mitch McConnell is very concerned about who they put on the ballot. And Roy Moore is somebody who obviously couldn't win the election in a red state like Alabama. Mitch McConnell supported Luther Strange, the sitting Republican senator, at least for a few more days.
All right, Chad Pergram, thank you so much for joining us.
Anytime.
Well, we are nearing the end of a year that will be remembered, among other things, for devastating back-to-back hurricanes and those destructive wildfires out west. Also, at this point, scientists say 2017 could become the second warmest year on record. Already, NASA says this October was the second warmest October in 137 years. Fox News senior meteorologist Janice Dean has a look back at the year in weather.
From deadly hurricanes to devastating wildfires, 2017 was marked by a host of extreme weather events.
January started off deadly in parts of the southeast. More than 80 confirmed tornadoes across Georgia, the second largest tornado outbreak ever in that state, claiming the lives of 20 people and causing $1.3 billion in damage. In February, Northern California receiving its wettest winter weather on record. Flooding rainfall and feet of snow triggering flooding and landslides, killing 5 people, jeopardizing the state's large Oroville Dam. This as flooding in San Jose forced 14,000 residents to evacuate. March was a snowy one in the Northeast, a late-season blizzard dumping 3 feet of snow in some areas. March also saw destructive tornadoes in several parts of the U.S. One outbreak in the Midwest killing 2 people as twisters hit Missouri and Illinois. Straight-line winds following that system also affecting New York and Michigan. Damage from that wind event costing $2.1 billion. In April, more tornadoes, this time in the nation's capital. A rare EF0 twister touching down near D.C.'s tidal basin. Several of the city's famous blossoming cherry trees uprooted. Meanwhile, the month of May delivering wind and baseball-sized hail to Denver, damaging property in what is now the most expensive hailstorm in Colorado history. $2.2 billion in damages. May also seeing historic flooding in parts of Missouri and Illinois. 20 people were killed. In June, 12 states affected by severe hail and wind damage, from Wyoming to New York. Minnesota was especially hard hit with damage to buildings and cars. And this summer, an active Atlantic hurricane season. 17 storms, including 6 major hurricanes. Among the biggest, Hurricane Harvey in late August, inundating Texas and Louisiana with water, killing more than 90 people. and costing nearly $200 billion in damage. Just days later, in early September, Hurricane Irma roared ashore, a catastrophic storm responsible for more than 130 deaths. It didn't stop there. September went on to be the most active month on record for Atlantic hurricanes. Toward the end of the month, another deadly storm, Hurricane Maria, devastating Puerto Rico, destroying homes and knocking out power across the entire island. Beyond hurricanes, the fall was the warmest ever in parts of New England, in Florida, California, and the Southwest. This September through November, marking the warmest period on record in more than a dozen cities, including Caribou, Maine, Miami, Florida, and San Jose, California. By October, deadly wildfires were making headlines in Northern California, killing more than 40 people. The blaze consuming more than 325 square miles and destroying at least 5,700 homes and businesses. As for the winter ahead, government scientists predicting many Americans could get a balmy winter, with mild temperatures expected across the South and the Northeast. There's a chance of chillier than normal weather from the Pacific Northwest to northern Wyoming and North Dakota.
High snow totals are also predicted across the northern plains from the Rockies to the Great Lakes. In New York, I'm Fox News senior meteorologist Janice Dean.
All right, we may be getting some more snow. Get ready.
Yeah.
When we come back, how spending caps could affect President Trump's defense plan and how that could impact already aging fleets of military aircraft. A live report from the Pentagon as the president tries to beef up the military next.
German. We danced in a German dance group. I wore lederhosen. President Trump's $700 billion defense plan could be in jeopardy because of federal budget caps set to take effect next month. Our man at the Pentagon, Lucas Tomlinson, live there today. Merry Christmas, Lucas. Big issue coming in 2018.
Well, Merry Christmas, Ed. That's right. President Trump signed a $700 billion defense bill into law earlier this month, but those budget caps from 2011, which robbed the Pentagon of billions of dollars, remain on the books, and they're needed to rebuild the military. The chairman of the House Armed Services Committee blames both parties. most everybody agrees that we need to spend more on defense. But you've got Republicans who want to cut other parts of the budget. You've got Democrats that want to increase other parts of the budget. So everybody's trying to use the defense budget as leverage for these other things. I think that's wrong. The approved short-term spending plan keeps the government and the military funded through January 19. But unless the budget caps are removed, roughly $100 billion will be taken away from the forces. President Trump's goal of rebuilding the military will be in jeopardy. Late last week, the Senate Majority Leader said defense cuts in recent years are too much.
Defense has actually been harder under the Budget Control Act than domestic programs have. So, and I think there's an urgency there.
Congressional aides tell me while these budget caps will be amended in some form next month, they're likely not to be repealed entirely. Ed?
Well, Lucas, we had a segment a little earlier about the threat from North Korea, the threat from Iran. There are obviously always threats around the world, but there are a lot right now heading into 2018. What kind of impact could there be to the U.S. military when you talk about the potential cuts?
Well, here are just a few examples. The head of Army Aviation recently told Congress that his pilots are flying at fewer flight hours than any time in the past 30 years. 70% of Marine Corps jets and helicopters can't fly right now, and out of the 542 U.S. Navy Super Hornet jets, half of them are grounded right now, awaiting repairs. According to the head of Naval Aviation, only 31% are even fully mission capable. When the Navy deployed 3 aircraft carriers this year, some which went off the Korean Peninsula, planes had been taken from training squadrons, robbing young pilots of critical flight time. Now, the Air Force is also impacted. The head of the Air Force says her service is up to 2,000 pilots short, and only half of its fleet of B-1 and B-2 bombers can fly. Now, in the Marine Corps, only 37% of its heavy-lift helicopters can fly, and that's not counting its 60 helicopters missing on the flight line. Earlier this month, the head of the Marine Corps spoke to Jennifer Griffin at the Reagan National Defense Forum at the Reagan Library outside Los Angeles about the shortage of aircraft hurting training.
If you don't have enough airplanes, you don't have all the airplanes, you're flying a small number of airplanes, you fly a small number of airplanes, those airplanes break more frequently, and then if you can't get the parts support you pay for the readiness, then you have a smaller number of airplanes, and so you're not getting the hours. The last year in aviation, we had a horrible safety year, probably the worst year in about 10 years.
Twice as many U.S. troops were killed this year in non-combat aviation crashes than last year, and many lawmakers on Capitol Hill say these budget cuts are to blame. Ed?
And Lucas, when you talk about, you had that one graphic saying that 50% of Navy jets can't fly. It doesn't sound to me like something that can be fixed in a year or two. What are the estimates in terms of how long it's going to take the U.S. military to rebuild?
That's right, Ed. Remember, these budget caps, known as sequestration, took effect in 2011, which took about 20% out of the defense budget away. It took years for the military to get in this hole. It's going to take years to get out. It takes years to manufacture aircraft. These companies can only make so many jets a year. In some cases, these jets are so old that companies that make the parts aren't even around anymore, which have forced some airmen to go to the desert scrap heap called the boneyard to scrounge for parts for their aircraft.
Wow.
It says a lot about the military. Ed.
Dramatic example indeed. Thanks for covering it for us, and Merry Christmas, Lucas.
Merry Christmas, Ed.
A shakeup at the FBI. Fox News has learned the Bureau is reassigning its top lawyer, General Counsel James Baker, to a different position. Sources tell Fox the move has less to do with the Russia probe than with other leak investigations. So let's bring in Lewis Nelson, a reporter at Politico. Thank you for joining us. The FBI General Counsel is read in on every investigation that the Bureau takes on. How big is this development?
It's certainly a significant step, especially to your point, like you just said, there are the tentacles or the FBI's general counsel, the general counsel at the Bureau, is likely to be involved in a lot of different investigations to have an understanding of investigations going on sort of across the Bureau, especially I think as it pertains to the president. There's the ongoing Russia investigation that is now in the control of the special prosecutor, but also related to the Hillary Clinton email investigation as well. So there's a lot of, the Bureau has become sort of especially politicized over the past, I guess probably over the past year, dating back all the way into the presidential election last year. And so there's a lot of significant investigations that that Baker is involved in, or at least was sort of privy to the details of.
Right. As we mentioned in the intro, sources familiar with this Baker situation have told Fox that the reassignment has more to do with the leak investigations than it has to do with the Russia probe. It's just speculation, but what might that mean?
You know, the president has made no secret in terms of how he talks about the Department of Justice and specifically when he talks about the FBI and I guess the government sort of on a larger macro scale, that he's not a big fan of leaks, that he considers these leaks to be dangerous. He considers them especially dangerous when they're coming from somewhere like the FBI where there's national security implications involved. So a move that, you know, like you said, it's certainly speculation, but anything that is sort of targeted with leaks, aimed at, you know, eliminating leaks, cutting down on leaks, would certainly match the way that the president has sort of tried to shape the government and specifically, I think, the Justice Department.
So we've also learned that Deputy Director Andrew McCabe is eligible for retirement in March. As you know, there's been a lot of talk about his retiring. There's a focus on campaign contributions that McCabe's wife took. What do you make of the controversy surrounding McCabe?
Well, you know, I think it's you know, there's a lot of steps to get to where Andrew McCabe is, you know, is seriously, you know, there's no direct evidence, I guess is the clearer way to put it, that Andrew McCabe is somehow acted as improperly as the deputy director of the FBI, but there are a lot of, there's not quite fire, but there has been a certain amount of smoke that Republicans and especially defenders of the president have tried to point to. One of them being these donations made to Deputy Director McCabe's wife when she was running for a seat in the Virginia State Legislature. That money came from the Political Action Committee that's run by Terry McAuliffe, who is the governor of Virginia, as well as the state's Democratic Party, where the governor obviously has a lot of control, things like that. But those donations came before Deputy Director McCabe would have had any influence over or would have had any involvement in any sort of investigation related to Hillary Clinton. So there's some things to point to there, but there's also there's not a smoking gun at this point or anything like that.
Right. Well, President Trump has certainly been vocal about the FBI and about McCabe in his tweets, for sure.
Yeah.
Helpful?
Well, I guess that probably depends who you ask, because I think there's a lot of people who would say the president's Twitter habit in general is not terribly helpful, including, I suspect, probably some people, certainly some people in his own party, in the Republican Party, and I suspect if you were to attach people to a lie detector in the White House, I suspect that some of them would probably say that the president's Twitter habit isn't always necessarily helpful, but especially in this case, it breaks with a tradition of the West Wing and the White House sort of not interfering with the Justice Department.
All right, Lewis Nelson of Politico, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. Merry Christmas.
You too.
Meanwhile, a federal judge lifting part of President Trump's refugee ban, what that means, at least for now, and why our next guest says the Supreme Court will almost certainly have the last word on this issue. That's next.
Our country must be safe. No man's doomed planet Dunkirk includes the war.
judge dealing a blow to President Trump's restrictions on admitting refugees to the U.S. from 11 countries, most of them in the Middle East and Africa. The judge in Seattle ruling the president cannot block refugees if they have a, quote, bona fide relationship with someone in the U.S., like a family member. Let's bring in Doug Burns, a former federal prosecutor. Doug, Merry Christmas. Thanks for being here.
Yes, sir. Happy holidays.
I wonder, what is, this is 3.0, I think?
Yes, it's the third one, right.
What should we know about this development?
Well, it's interesting. This has basically been a separation of powers tennis match. The executive branch issued the order. That was the first shot over the net. Back came a court ruling invalidating it. So they came with the backhand, the second one. And back it came with other court decisions invalidating it. This is the third one. Now, the Ninth Circuit, which is Seattle, and the Fourth Circuit, Virginia, both have pending cases about the travel ban. The Supreme Court on December 4th said, A, everything's being stayed, okay, and the ban can stay in place. That's why this latest decision really doesn't have a lot of practical significance, because the ban remains. But the Supreme Court said once the Ninth Circuit and the Fourth Circuit are done in evaluating the case, they insinuated that they will hear the case, and in my opinion, that's what's going to happen.
And so how quickly do you think the Supreme Court will deal with this in 2018?
Next term, probably around the middle of the term. And then the arguments are actually pretty interesting.
Right. And what's the best argument for the president? We've heard about what this judge out in Seattle thinks, but what's his best opportunity, to use your analogy, to have a smash in 2018, maybe get it over the net there?
The overhead.
Yeah, overhead smash.
But no, I mean, he has been, the administration, I should say, has been saying, national security, the safety of Americans. And truth be told, they've overplayed that a little. And in the Ninth Circuit opinion, they made a little bit of a sarcastic reference. They said, national security is not a talismanic, phrase. So maybe they have. But their best argument, honestly, and you've heard many legal experts say this, is that the applicable statute, right, in the immigration laws, gives the president pretty wide authority to do this type of thing. What the Ninth Circuit said, however, is that the president didn't make an adequate showing case by case that particular people who were going to come into the United States actually posed a threat. But the authority is quite broad.
But then when you hear about someone being here because of a family member,
right?
We saw this terror attack. It was an attempted terror attack a couple of weeks ago here in New York City, and we understand that the terrorist was here because of chain migration.
See, I'm giving you the legal analysis, but you can't avoid the politics. You can't avoid the politics of it. So your point is an excellent one, of course, Ed, and that is that, many on the right say, well, just because somebody purports, we'll use that word, to be a family member or have a job or have something to do with a university or education, that doesn't really mean that people aren't committing fraud. Again, it's case-by-case basis. And those arguments are viable on both sides. I mean, if somebody legitimately is part of a family, of course nobody wants to break apart families, but if there's certain fraud and misrepresentations, that's a different discussion.
The Supreme Court's going to get the final word. We're looking forward to seeing that pretty soon.
Absolutely.
Doug Burns. Good to see you. That does it for us here on America's News Headquarters. From here in Manhattan, we wish you and yours a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Take care.
Saved us almost $800 when we switched our auto and home insurance.
Liberty did what?
Yeah, they saved us a ton, which gave us a little wiggle room in our budget.
Wish our insurance did that. Then we could get a real babysitter instead of your brother.
Hey, welcome back. This guy, right?
Yes.
Ellen.
That's my robe.
You could save $782 when Liberty stands with you. Liberty Mutual Insurance.
The day after chemo might mean a trip back to the doctor's office, just for a shot. But why go back there when you can stay home with Neulasta Onpro?
Strong chemo can put you at risk of serious infection. Neulasta helps reduce infection risk by boosting your white blood cell count, which strengthens your immune system. In a key study, Neulasta reduced the risk of infection from 17% to 1%, a 94% decrease. Applied the day of chemo, Neulasta Onpro is designed to deliver Neulasta the next day. Neulasta is for certain cancer patients receiving strong chemotherapy. Do not take Neulasta if you're allergic to Neulasta or Neupogen, filgrastim. Ruptured spleen, sometimes fatal as well as serious lung problems, allergic reactions, kidney injuries, and capillary leak syndrome have occurred. Report abdominal or shoulder tip pain, trouble breathing, or allergic reactions to your doctor right away. In patients with sickle cell disorders, serious, sometimes fatal crises can occur. The most common side effect is bone and muscle ache.
So why go back there? If you'd rather be home, ask your doctor about Neulasta Onpro.
You'll get some presents this Christmas. A book, a picture, a sweater you don't really like. But your best present is coming from a very unexpected place. Republicans in Congress just passed the biggest tax reform in 30 years. 300,000 new jobs, an extra $2,000 for middle-class families. No, you haven't had too much eggnog. Republicans in Congress really are letting you keep more of your hard-earned money. So happy tax cuts to all, and to all a good night.
So this is the bill right here, and we're very proud of it. It's going to be a tremendous thing for the American people. It's going to be fantastic for the economy.
Will it be the Christmas gift that keeps on giving, or one that taxpayers want to return like a bad sweater? Hello, everybody. I'm Lauren Simonetti in for Neil Cavuto. Merry Christmas to you and your family at home. This is a special edition of Your World. President Trump signing that $1.5 trillion tax cut into law just in time for Christmas, but it still may take some time until you start to feel it. So Fox Business Network's Jerry Willis with all the details.
The most sweeping tax package since 1986 passed both houses of Congress last week, delivering a major victory to President Trump and GOP leaders. Just 7 weeks after House Budget Committee members issued a draft bill, Republican legislators gave final approval to the bill, delivering $1.5 trillion in tax relief. The president signed the bill into law Friday after Congress passed a continuing resolution to keep the government funded. And that means that taxpayers will begin seeing more money in their paychecks as soon as February, as withholding tables are changed to accommodate lower tax rates. But the biggest tax cut is delivered to corporations, which get a 14 percentage point cut in corporate taxes. Other benefits to corporate America include immediate and full expensing of capital equipment for 5 years, a 20% deduction for small businesses organized as pass-throughs, and repeal of the corporate alternative minimum tax. On the individual side, the reform retained 7 tax brackets, but it reduced rates. The top rate drops to 37% from 39.6%. The standard deduction is effectively doubled to $24,000 for joint filers. That, along with the doubling of the child tax credit, is what Republicans say will deliver significant tax relief to members of the middle class. Democrats, though, are quick to point out that the rate cuts are temporary, expiring in 2025. Also on the individual side, deductions are capped, with state and local tax deductions limited to a total of $10,000. Previously, families could write off all state and local property and income taxes. And that's not all. The bill limits the mortgage interest deduction to $750,000 in mortgage debt, down from $1 million previously. Back to you, Lauren.
Thanks, Jerry. So we ask now, what about your bottom line? Tax cuts could show up in some paychecks as soon as February, and they'll be retroactive to January 1st. What will that mean for your paycheck? Let's get some answers from certified voting accountant Dan Geltrude joining us now on set. Dan, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
You're not optimistic here, but I gotta say, you're pessimistic, but you're still going to be in business.
Yeah,
you might even be more popular.
Absolutely. So there's a lot to be optimistic about on that front.
What don't you like? What is the biggest thing you don't like in the tax reform bill?
I don't like that they've gotten away from the itemized deductions and specifically related to SALT, right? State and local taxes, that's going to be limited to $10,000. I don't think that's a good thing, but particularly for us in the tri-state area of New York.
Our New Yorkers, our folks in New Jersey, Illinois, California, are they going to flee to lower tax states as a result?
Yeah, I think that's the case. I think there is going to be be a migration to places like Florida and Texas and Nevada, where it's a heck of a lot friendlier.
A lot of folks are asking, right now, before 2018, should you prepay your 2018 taxes to take advantage of the current tax code?
Well, let's clarify that for a moment as far as prepaying. What you should do is pay all of your state taxes, income taxes, before the end of the year. Don't wait until January because you want to get that deduction in this year. As far as prepayments, you want to consider making a prepayment for your real estate taxes for 2018 before the end of 2017.
Okay. What about folks in the trades, electricians, plumbers, for instance? Do they have an incentive now to incorporate, to set up an S-corp or a pass-through or something like that to take advantage of lower tax rates?
Yeah, I mean, there's a real incentive to create a pass-through entity like an LLC or an S-corp so that you'll have that income flowing through at a lower tax rate as opposed to being an employee.
Mm-hmm. Talk to me about the AMT. Yeah,
the AMT, the alternative minimum tax. It disappeared for corporations, but it's back in for individuals. Why is that not so good? First of all, it complicates everything because the AMT is an alternative calculation. It's a parallel calculation. So you have to do your tax return twice. And whatever the higher number of taxes, that's what you pay.
But I thought taxes were going down for 80% of Americans.
And they probably will, because the people who are not itemizing their deductions, they're going to get a benefit because the standard deduction doubled and tax rates came down. So they're going to do very well. But people who are itemizing, not so much.
How do you feel about these 7 brackets? It still sounds complicated to a lot of people who are probably calling you up on the phone and saying, Dan, what do I do?
Well, good for me, but overall, for tax reform and simplification, it doesn't make any sense. The House bill originally had brought it down to 4 brackets. When we get the final bill, the final law, it's going to be 7. I don't understand why we needed that.
But all those numbers are indeed lower, including
they are lower. There's just a lot of them.
Yeah, Dan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so our companies already stepping up now that tax cuts are coming up? The answer is yes. Within hours of Congress passing that bill, AT&T says it will invest $1 billion and give 200,000 of its workers bonuses. But it's not just AT&T. The list of other companies making similar moves is growing. Lee Speakerman says we can expect more of this in 2018. Adrian Elrod, yeah, you're not so sure. But Lee, we like the optimism. In fact, I think you called animal spirits are returning to corporate America. What do you think?
Absolutely. First, Merry Christmas to you and everybody. John Maynard Keynes, who is not always a hero as an economist to Republicans, captured something very mathematical and very complex, animal spirits. And he said it was crucial that those be aroused because a lot of what it takes to start a business or even expand an existing business would seem irrational. It takes faith. It takes a leap of faith by the entrepreneur. And the environment that President Trump and the Republican Congress has created is going to, I think, inure to the enormous benefit of the country, to the middle-income people in our country who haven't seen any real wage growth in 20 years. I think it's going to be fantastic. I think it is not just the tax reform and the tax cuts, which are terrific. They're pro-investment, pro-job, pro-middle income, but also the deregulatory effort that is unprecedented and unleashing American energy. That's the triad. You put those 3 things together, and you have made the United States a much more attractive business environment, and you've really helped the middle-income people in our country.
Adrian, I want to bring you in here because, yes, tax cuts are great. This 21% corporate tax rates, but do you think businesses instantaneously are going to go out and start spending money, or are they going to make their decisions based on the market at the time, right? What they think their profits are going to be. You don't just start an assembly line like that, or do you?
Right. Well, that's the problem with this bill, the way it's written, is that there's no guarantee that these corporations are going to pass the savings that they receive in the corporate tax rate down to their consumers, down to customers, down to their employees. So those are the things that we don't know about this bill. What we do know is that it's going to drive up taxes on middle-class families. 70% of middle-class families are projected to see a tax increase by 2027 under this bill. We know that. Number 2, we also know that this drives a huge hole in the deficit. So, by the way, no Republican who voted for this bill can ever go out and say, oh, I'm a deficit hawk again, because this bill puts a $1.5 trillion hole in the deficit. So those are a handful of the problems that Democrats see with this bill.
All right, first of all, that's far down the road. And Lee, is there the option that the tax cuts for individuals get extended? Especially if they're popular.
Well, here's the thing. I think we should de-gimmick the law. Unfortunately, in order to pass through reconciliation, they had to stay within a $1.5 trillion static increase in the deficit over 10 years. And so a lot of things were put in as gimmicks that make the personal income tax cuts, many of them expire. Nobody believes that will continue. What I would recommend, and I've said it before, is President Trump, and he has the authority to do it, implement a 10% goods import tariff. We import $2.2 trillion worth of goods every year. If you knock out North American oil, Mexico and Canadian oil, and don't tax that, it's $2.1 trillion or more. So over 10 years, $2.1 trillion in additional revenue. That would give us $600 billion to plug the hole in the deficit, $500 billion for infrastructure, $500 billion to make the ACA better, and $500 billion to take the gimmicks out of the tax code. That would take care of it and give us the revenue that we need.
I just want to get us back to where we started, and I'm up against the clock here. Adrian, let's end this with you. We are seeing Comcast, Boeing, Wells Fargo be more generous right now. Do you think these are companies kind of just trying to get in the administration's good graces, or do you believe, with a recent survey says from the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, that 59% of businesses say they're not going to increase hiring as a result of tax reform?
Well, first of all, I do want to applaud all these businesses that are coming out and saying, I'm going to give my, employees a bonus. I'm going to, provide some of these savings I'm going to get along to my employees and to my customers. But there's no guarantee the way this bill is written. There's no guarantee, and there's certainly no requirement that businesses and corporations have to do that. And I think that's where you see an issue here, that the corporate tax cuts in this bill are permanent. The tax cuts to middle-class families are not permanent, and we certainly cannot rely on the potential future of what Congress will do, and that's what this bill does.
All right, well, there are two things in life that are guaranteed, and we know what one of them is.
It'll be better, and they will get paid more to their employees.
Merry Christmas, guys. We've got to leave it there.
Merry Christmas.
Coming up, no Grinch or Scrooge here. The Dow is poised for its best year in more than 20 years. And shoppers, yeah, you're spending more money. Will this trend keep going into 2018? And later, forget paying workers early. Critics say that Walmart's new plan proves it's not paying workers enough. Are they right or wrong? We'll be right back.
When I grow up, I want to take old stuff I find and
The stock market is at an all-time high. We're just hitting another record right now on the stock market. You see what's going on with the stock market. They know that we know what we're doing, so it's going up at record clips. Our stock market has reached an all-time high today. All-time high. Think of it. Nobody ever talks about it.
President Trump talking up stocks, maybe with good reason. The Dow posting more than 70 record highs so far this year. Now some analysts are predicting double-digit gains in 2018 for the S&P 500 after passing those tax cuts. We ask, is that doable? And we bring in market watchers Lindsay Bell, Catherine Rooney Vera, and Gary B. Smith. Merry Christmas. How are you guys doing? Gary, Christmas. I think we're all doing well because our 401ks are looking pretty good. But Gary, I want to begin with you. We got the tax cuts. How do you keep the momentum going in 2018?
Well, I think now that we have the tax cuts, and I think the average person that at least is paying federal income tax is going to see more money in their pocket. I think we don't need to do anything because I think the natural evolution was when you give people the money they've earned back to themselves to spend, rather than government, it gets spent more efficiently, it gets spent more effectively, whether it's people choosing to go to Starbucks or people choosing to invest or people, maybe buying a bigger home or furnishings. It gets put back into the economy in a productive way. Mm-hmm. The reason that's important is that the GDP is going to drive the stock prices. So you're going to have a higher GDP, you're going to have corporations keeping and probably earning more money. I think that's going to raise the stock price, stock market even maybe higher at a greater rate than we saw in 2017. And trust me, I was skeptical a few months ago that this would all occur, so I'm a believer.
But look, you brought up GDP. We got 3.2%. Fastest pace in about 2 years. Lindsay, the economy is growing. What gets it growing even more in addition to tax cuts in 2018?
Well, these tax cuts are certainly going to help. That's one thing for sure. That's going to flow right to the bottom line. Right now, we're expecting earnings per share for the S&P 500 to grow close to 20% in 2018 once this tax cut takes effect. That's going to be huge. We're already exiting 2017 with an economy that is gaining momentum, as you just pointed out, in the GDP numbers. We're seeing a lot of different, the consumer is feeling really good. We've seen a number of companies today and yesterday announce plans to give bonuses to their employees.
Something we haven't spoken about, and maybe Catherine can here, is the effect of deregulation with all of this. The administration has already said our goal for 2017 was, for every one new regulation, we're going to cut 2. Well, the goal for 2018 is we're going to cut 3 for every new regulation. That's going to help the market.
Lauren, what's the quickest way to grow the bottom line? As Lindsay said, growing the bottom line. 2018 is going to be fantastic for economic growth. We're going to see a boom to earnings. The quickest way to grow earnings is to cut regulation, cut costs, cut taxes, and cut regulations. So I definitely agree. I think earnings are going to grow from 120 to 140. Next year, we see an expansion in earnings growth as well. And I think it's very important to look at the sectors as well. So if you're scared of the stock market, the multiples look expensive to you, even though you think the index is going to go higher, as I do. I think we push to 3,000 next year in the S&P 500. Look at the sectors. What are the sectors that most benefit from tax cuts? Industrials. They pay 38% on average. Effective rate. So cutting that to 20% is going to disproportionately affect industrials, which, by the way, also invest in CapEx, and included in this tax reform is an incentive to invest in CapEx as everything is depreciable today.
I'm loving the optimism, but I got to bring in Gary, that maybe will be the Scrooge here, if there is one. We can't just move up continuously. What can stop this rally?
You're reminding me of my Scrooge days, Lauren, just a few months ago. Oh my gosh, egg on my face. But here's what's going to stop it. Let's take something like Bitcoin, for example, which it may turn out to be wonderful and great and have value, and the Winklevosses are quadrillionaires because of Bitcoin, or it could turn out to be zero. But the point is, there's a lot of the market that is now momentum investing. People buying because they've seen prices go up or they've seen their neighbors make money and they keep buying more. That rarely ends well. Now, before I come off as a complete Scrooge, let me give you the one flip side I'm seeing. I'm seeing an excitement across the sectors that I've never seen before. Things like the blockchain technology, not necessarily the cryptocurrency. Things like artificial intelligence. Things like self-driving cars. I've seen a resurgence in animal spirits and industry more so than I've ever seen since the tech boom of the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah. I would add that it's a global thing too, around the world.
Well, and that is an excellent point. We are seeing a synchronized stock market rally. Ladies and gentlemen, I gotta go. Merry Christmas to you and your families. Enjoy.
You too.
Don't eat too much. Well, you probably already did. All right, guys. While you're making plans for your New Year's celebrations next week, find out why police are redoubling their plans to keep you safe. Honey, I said sweet potatoes.
Yes, you did. I forgot the shrimp. Shrimp and apple pie.
Dad likes pecan.
Oh, well, in that case, I can.
Love to drive? Visit your Infinity retailer for leases starting at $289 a month during the Start Your Own Legacy winter sales event. Infinity, empower the drive.
The moment a fish is pulled up from the water, it's a race against time. And keeping it in the right conditions is the best way to get that fish to your plate safely.
Sometimes a product arrives and the cold chain has been interrupted, and we need to be able to identify where in the cold chain that occurred.
We took our world-class network and we developed devices to track environmental conditions. This device allows people to understand what's happening with the location, but also if it's too hot, if it's too cold, if it's been dropped. It's completely unique.
If you have a sensor that can keep track of your product, it keeps everybody kind of honest that way.
Who knew a tiny sensor could help keep the food chain safe?
You'll get some presents this Christmas. A book, a picture, a sweater you don't really like. But your best present is coming from a very unexpected place. Republicans in Congress just passed the biggest tax reform in 30 years. 300,000 new jobs. An extra $2,000 for middle-class families. No, you haven't had too much eggnog. Republicans in Congress really are letting you keep more of your hard-earned money. So happy tax cuts to all, and to all a good night.
An American journey inside the moments and milestones that help shape our history. Join John Scott for a trip of a lifetime in this Happening Now special tonight.
This fall, the most powerful pop culture insiders are coming to Page 6 TV. While all the others are sweeping the red carpets, we're inside collecting the real dirt to get the exclusive on the elusive. From A-listers to the Kardashian sisters, socialites to the hottest sites, and billionaires to the who lives theirs. This fall, it's who's on the inside that counts. Page 6 TV, weekdays. Check your local listings.
Hi, I'm looking for the clown book section.
What's the tax base like in this thing?
It's 50 pounds.
Wow. Is this still Bakersfield?
Haskins' all new season premieres January 23rd on FX.
1 week until New Year's Eve as cities like New York and Las Vegas stepping up security ahead of the ball drop. What are authorities doing to keep you safe this holiday? It's a question a lot of people want to know as they make their plans. Counter Extremism Project spokesperson and senior policy advisor Tara Mahler joins us now. Tara, good to see you.
Good to see you.
All right, New York City, Times Square, it's historic. So many people crowd the area to watch the new year be rung in. What is the police department and law enforcement doing to keep us safe more than usual this year?
New Year's Eve, a big night for New York City. I think they expect up to 2 million people for the ball drop. Obviously, NYPD is taking a lot of measures, particularly since we had 2 ISIS-inspired attacks in New York over the past couple of months. And ISIS has been calling for additional attacks and trying to inspire attacks throughout the holiday season. So New Year's Eve, what they're doing is they're going to have a lot of cameras. They're going to have a lot of security and checkpoints. They're going to have hidden measures in place. They're going to have a lot of overhead helicopters. And, this is happening not just in New York City, but Las Vegas after the shooting we saw there. It's going to happen in cities across the country, mostly because of the attacks that we've seen over the course of the last year, not just over in Europe, but here at home.
And as you noted, this time of year, when the West celebrates Christmas and New Year's, that's an opportune time for ISIS to strike, unfortunately. You're talking about Las Vegas, and there are similarities, in my opinion, between all the big buildings around Times Square in New York and the sniper factor that we saw with the Vegas mass murder. In Vegas, how are they preparing after that attack?
Sure. Vegas has actually increased their funding for security, I think 2 to 3-fold this year in light of the Vegas attack. They're also having additional FBI support this year. I think it's up to 100 more in place. And I think you're going to see probably ramped up security measures. At the end of the day, to prevent an attack, it requires law enforcement and intelligence working together. It also requires vigilance. The public needs to be aware of things, and people should be aware of things in general. And then it also requires steps in the lead up. So every day and night, the law enforcement and intel community are working to prevent and thwart plots. And also a lot of the, tech companies need to be taking down a lot of the radicalization material that's inspiring people. So hopefully everything will stay safe. There's a lot of moving parts here. And, at the end of the day, up to 2 million people in Times Square. So NYPD is going to be very busy that night.
Do you expect to see more screening at hotels, at airports, at train stations where people come in?
Absolutely. I think one of the things you always see in terms of ISIS-inspired attacks and their material is they call not just for large gathering places, but transportation targets. Christmas markets have been the focus of some of their propaganda materials, as have large gatherings and concerts. So I think you're going to see ramped up security at all sorts of New Year's Eve related events, not just Times Square, but events around the city.
Tara, I'm boring. I'm staying home. I'll feel safer as a result. But that's not the message that we want to send. The American way of life is to go out, live your normal life, celebrate 2018. Do you think people are still going to do that in numbers that we've seen in years past?
Yes, I think they should do that. I think we need to continue to do that. The message that I always give is, keep calm and carry on. You can't really let this impact your life. At the end of the day, there's an infinite amount of targets, so you need to live your life. If there's a credible and imminent threat, law enforcement should release an updated notice. But as of now, there doesn't seem to be that. So you have to live your life. It's New Year's Eve, and I'd encourage everybody to either stay home, go out, do what you normally do, and don't change your plans.
And as you're having that champagne, keep focused, right?
Absolutely.
Don't lose sight of what you need to do. Tara, thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Well, I think it was all about online this year. Well, a lot of shoppers prefer to wait in line instead, like in the real store. And who wouldn't want to access their cash as soon as they make it? So why is Walmart now coming under fire for helping its workers do just that?
Hi, I'm Joan London. Today's senior living communities have never been better. With the
Fox News Alert, I'm Doug McKelway in Washington. President Trump is celebrating Christmas the way millions of Americans do, surrounded by family. The president released a brief video in which his wife Melania joined him to, quote, wish America and the entire world a very Merry Christmas. U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Nikki Haley says the U.S. will cut $285 million from its donation to the United Nations next year. That move comes less than a week after the UN General Assembly condemned the administration's decision to move the Israeli embassy in Israel to Jerusalem. The good news for many in the Northeast and Midwest is that it is a white Christmas. The bad news is that there's a blizzard in parts of New England and bitter cold in much of the Midwest. A band of states from eastern Montana and the Dakotas to Wisconsin are enduring wind-chill temperatures in places at 30 to 40 below zero. Join me for a special report at 6 p.m. Eastern.
So it looks like it's not just point, click, and buy this holiday season. Retail sales rising last month. We got an expected surge in online sales. We did, but it turns out people were hitting the malls as well, especially the electronic stores. So is this a sign of better things to come for the traditional retailers? Let's bring in our retail watchers, Heather Herzog and Monica Meda. Ladies, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
You have to admit, you guys were a little bit scared that some of your online purchases weren't going to arrive to be under the Christmas tree today. You were a little bit scared.
Lauren, here's the thing. I made all of my purchases almost a month ago. So I think because of that and a lot of other online shoppers went ahead and did that. I mean, the fact of the matter is 80% of people were shopping via their mobile devices according to PayPal. So because of that and because it was so easy for people to shop, I think people probably had a more merrier Christmas because those delays were non-existent for the most part.
No doubt. We saw, $6.5+ billion on Cyber Monday alone, but we're also seeing, Monica, more people go to the store. It's easier, it's faster, you don't have to wait for your item. What do you think?
Well, absolutely. I think you're seeing the highest consumer confidence that you've seen in 17 years, that with a rising stock market and unemployment that is low and also underemployment that has been reducing over the past year, people are finally feeling the confidence to start spending, and you're actually even seeing that with the savings rate. The savings rate is going down. Now, all of that is great news for online retailers and conventional retailers, but what's happening for conventional retail is bigger than this holiday shopping season, so I think their worries will continue into 2018.
As the season progressed, Heather, did you change your expectation, your prediction for the strength of holiday sales? Because the National Retail Federation did not. They're still looking for that 4%, $682 billion spend.
Well, we were seeing an upward trajectory of how people were spending over the course of the last couple of months. So same-store sales, for the most part, were on the rise for retailers across the board. I mean, minus a couple, that were having some store closures, etc. But because you were seeing that, and to Monica's point, when you were seeing consumer spending, consumer confidence increase, that sentiment was there, and it was also a combination of what I call frugal fatigue. I think pre-recession, people just were sick. They didn't want to spend anything, and now they're sick of saving. So now they just wanted to go out and spend their hard-earned cash.
I don't think I bought one thing that wasn't at least 40% off. Every single store, 40%, 50% off, everything in stock. Should retailers be a little bit worried that they have to discount so much, Monica?
Well, retailers need to convert the merchandise into cash. This is the time to do it. 40% of sales for retailers happen in November and December every single year. And so what's interesting is e-commerce is really changing how retail happens, but it's the underlying debt that a lot of these companies have that's really shaking them and taking them to the verge of bankruptcy. And so they've got to translate their merchandise into cash over the holiday season, which is good for shoppers.
The retail ice age, the death of the shopping mall, these are all themes and topics that we've explored in depth in years past, Heather. But did we see a sea change this year that many brick and mortars, maybe not JCPenney, for instance, they've already warned, American Eagle, but for many retailers that they got the formula right and they're going to stay put and do well?
Yeah, this retail apocalypse that we kept hearing over and over again during this season is pretty much non-existent. If you do look at some of the smaller retailers, and especially the online retailers, that really have their system down, and they were able to hone in on who that customer and that consumer are they really were able to nail and stick the landing on those sales. It is those juggernaut stores that have these massive square footage that they can't get the product out fast enough. They don't have the store traffic to go in and buy that product. Those are the ones that we're starting to see attrition. But these smaller stores that are pretty nimble, they have a really good online footprint, those are the ones that are really getting those customers in. And, it sort of negates this whole narrative that retail is dead.
Right. Well, although I must admit, I did go into, and I won't name the store, one physical store over this holiday shopping season, and I needed 4 different items. They did not have any of them. All of them had to be shipped to me from the internet. They did all of that. They arranged all that. I'm like, oh, I'm in a physical store here doing like the right thing, and they're giving me their order from their website.
Don't give up on the stores.
All right, we'll leave it there. I like that. Ladies, Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Speaking of retail, we know Walmart certainly has its enemies, but now it's getting grief for letting its workers get paid before payday. What are we talking about? We're going to explain that and debate it coming up. We also know college is pretty pricey. How about an $85 billion taxpayer bailout for other people's tuition? We report on this one, and you might hide. Please don't. Come back.
Now, if anyone would like to stay, I'm going to hold a comprehensive review session after every class.
Do we have to?
No.
Then kiss my Kirby butt. Goodbye.
Rise for 316, please. Thank you. David. Come on.
I don't know. What's up? What's going on with yourself? Look at the hoes with the big old butts. Ho, ho, ho. Looking for the hoes with the big old butts. Big butt there, a big butt there. Looking for the hoes with the big old butts. All night long, them lawns, oh yeah. All night long, them lawns. All night long, them lawns, oh yeah. All night long. Looking for the hoes, looking for the hoes with the big old butts. Big butt there, the big butt there. Looking for the hoes with the big old butts. Hey, Speedin, how you doing? We're alright, low rider. Yeah. All night long, the lawns, oh yeah.
Save it. I'll save it. Save it. Okay.
Oh. 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 All night long, the blondes. All night long. All night long. Oh. Oh, 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 oh. Looking for the hoes. Looking for the hoes with the big old butts. Big butt there, a big butt there. Looking for the hoes with the big old butts. Trying to give me a big old butt hoe. Knocking at my door. We on the floor. Told you though. Slipping toe. Have it dripping like Moet. Moet. Pop it, tape, keeps wet. Up in the gutter from the Corvette. Corvette. Oh, it's Daddy to hop in my caddy. Merry Christmas. It's Jerry Rice. Yeah. Dude. Alright, we're gonna put that thing over here like that. That's what we're gonna do, though. Yeah. Watching my show, smoking my bro, ashes be hitting my toe, you knocking at my door, you be on the floor. Yeah, buddy. Yeah.
I got tea. Got tea bags. Got more tea bags and Madison Ave with Gucci bags. Yeah. Might as well Gucci bags.
Yeah. Look marvelous. Marvelous. Yo.
You made me spill my cup of tea. I'm gonna turn into Muhammad Ali. You beat you so bad you think you're 10 Bruce Lees. You're on your knees. Bruce Lee don't play like that. No, you don't need Mr. T, Muhammad Ali, Bruce Lee.
Oh, I'm gonna do some.
This is fun.
Burgerator.
Get bug like a nunchuck, Cadillac truck. Yo. I thought that was there.
Hey, talking to me, man? You ain't talking to me like that. But turn around. I ain't messing around. Be like James Brown. I run this town. Boss of Brown. Yeah. We're gonna... Yo.
We're gonna play some Destiny. That's what I'm fitting to do, players. Rat-a-tat-tat, clap them up, lay them on the flat, on the ground. Oh, not messing around. I drop around in the clown. So run this town with balls of brown, Jack. I'll be on your back against a wall. Yo, I'm with the raw, with the through your jaw, uppercut, left, right, and like Toothless Records, and you can't. Oh, see that right there? Yeah, why not? Kung Fu. Oh! Cause I'm about to rat-a-tat-tat, shake 'em up, laying flat on the ground, not messing around. No. Be like James Brown. Oh, no. Come on, knuckle up. I don't want to knuckle up, I just want to cut you up. Come on, brother from Calcutta with the box cutter, have your neck dripping like butter, sucker. In the gutter, in the river, 2 chills penetrate your liver, Jack. Then you're on your back, toe tagged up, and I toss them, throw them up, yeah, cause I get down, cause for the crown be the holder, built like a boulder, like I'm a holster, running that lip, might get you shot, insert the clip, make a body drip, cause I'm on that kryptonite, hydroponic, chronic, dun. Hey, but play Destiny soon. Soon to be Destiny players. Rat-a-tat-tat, lay 'em up. Splat. Okay. Yo, be me, man. The realest. Tycoon. Be like baboons. Baboon.
Well, I'm sorry, officer.
I didn't know she was your daughter. She's going down low. That's that dude from the Christmas thing. I'm gonna sign out. That's what I'm talking about. Boom. I'll stretch you out. Rat-a-tat-tat, that's what I'm about. Insert the clip, make your body drip. Straight bucking, not giving a what in. Tucking your chain, man. So nothing but a game. It's great day. It's old. Ain't never been told. Black and bold like coffee. You want 2 cups of coffee? I got coffee. 2 cups of coffee. For your belly. Coffee, Jack. I'll be back. What? Folgers? You want Folgers? How'd you get behind bars? It wasn't Folgers. The jail scene. Jail. Dun. How'd you get the chair? It wasn't Folgers. Okay. Let's review it. So anything? Sign up, man. Orderly. You got the time. Let's get on your navigation. Primitive. Navigation. Control.